We welcome in the TSN insider and our Friday buddy, Darren Dreger. We just went through about 1,000 angry tweets about the Edmonton Oilers, who have won 3 times in their last 11. And for whatever reason, last night was the night where a lot of people just snapped, including beat writers, including people that cover that team on our network, including people that write for papers. What are you seeing and hearing around this Oilers club, who have been the worst team in the NHL over the last little bit, while we've seen these other playoff contenders like Florida, Dallas, Colorado crank up their game?
Well, what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing remarkably is a lack of speed when I watch the Oilers play. And, that's Connor McDavid excluded, of course. But, then, I heard you guys coming into the segment here. You look at the players who are no longer there, right? You look at Ryan McLeod, the guy can skate. Holloway, kid can flat out skate. Warren Foegele, I had no problem with Foegele. He's a bigger body, but he can move up and down the ice. Cody Ceci, probably played some of his best hockey on the blue line of the Edmonton Oilers. Now you watch him play in Dallas. He's a pretty good piece. He's a real good piece for the Dallas Stars. Just the collection of players that aren't playing in Edmonton, a lot of that is related to the salary cap issue, of course. And, they got poached by the St. Louis Blues via the offer sheet. So I can appreciate all of that. I do. But then you have to do the math. And the math sees what you brought in. And now you've got Victor Arvidsson, who I thought he was better than this. I thought he'd be a real good ad. He's a hard worker. All of those things, I thought it'd be a compliment. And it just doesn't seem to be working out for him with the Oil. Jeff Skinner, I think we knew what to expect there. You'd get a pop of offense here or there. Defensively, with all due respect, I think he's been porous or a liability most of his career, right? So the writing was on the wall there. But and for a team that is right up against that salary cap, you just can't miss. You can't take, especially when you're letting good pieces go out the door that in some respects were homegrown within the organization, and you knew. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, and that's a tough fix, So they bring in Wallman, an effective defenseman, not a bad player, not a bad piece, right? And Trent Frederick, well, he's a good player too, but he's not healthy. And when he gets healthy, sure, he's going to help. But that's all of what we're seeing now. The true indictment, though, frankly, fellas, comes from within. And I'm not going to identify who's saying this. It's like they're playing lifeless hockey right now. And maybe that's excusable when you're coming out of a Game 7 Stanley Cup final loss, devastated, and a summer of healing has just scabbed it over, but really hasn't healed, right? So you go through the doldrums early in the year. Man, we're at the end here. We're in the final push of the regular season, and they're dealing with this stuff. So I hate the reality is obvious. If the fix is there, it's internal or it's not. And if it's not, then Stan Mullman's got a big problem.
Rhett, you tell us what you're seeing with Bouchard, and we'll get Dregs to react to that. Because when he says lifeless, like Bouchard's a poster boy.
And that's what I'm wondering, if the guys are sitting on the bench watching a guy that's supposed to be I don't know if he's a Norris Trophy, but he's supposed to be a top guy. And he's supposed to be better, and he's good. He's a focal point on that decor at minimum. And I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. Like I said it earlier. I don't watch the Oilers religiously. It's not I don't follow them with passion like a lot of people do. But I don't have to see that he doesn't compete in areas where wins and losses add up. Right? Like it's pretty flat. I think it has to be infectious in that room, and infectious might be the wrong word, but
contagious.
Contagious is the word. Yes.
What are you seeing with Bouchard specifically, Dregs?
Yeah, a lot of what Rhett just said, and we used to reference the Bouch bomb, right? And that was that slapper from the point, and normally it was on the power play. Well, now the Bouch bomb is not that anymore. It's like an ill-timed blunder. We saw it at the start of the week against Buffalo, and you see it too often. And now let's bring it back into the cap era, because normally that's where you have to go when again you're talking about trying to change things in the longer term. So they've got Darnell Nurse locked down at a big number, 9+. You know, Bouchard's a little different. He's a restricted free agent, but you know, there's rumblings of big numbers expected from his side of the negotiation. Not that long ago, maybe a year ago, you're sitting there going, okay, this kid's going to get paid, and deservedly so. He's going to get paid. But this year, the body of the work doesn't represent those kind of dollars. And, you know, especially when you've got a decent defenseman in Darnell Nurse, but how can you have all of that money tied up? And then look, I follow social media to a point, but I'm looking at some of, you know, the media, maybe not necessarily locally, but around the league. And I was in fact, I was asked about it this morning on a radio program about Sam Bennett and whether or not he could be a fit. And you saw the reporting out of Edmonton that they kicked tires on Mikko Rantanen with the Carolina Hurricanes before he went to Dallas. Well, how are all those pieces going to fit? I mean, you know, so you land one of those forwards. Well, that tells me what they're going to do with Evan Bouchard. And it's not pay him $10 or $11 million annually.
But
it's
they should
move him out. That's and based on his play, you're right. I mean, how can you? You can't.
And to defend Bouchard, he's come off back-to-back playoffs where he's been exceptional. He's a 1.5 per game as a blue liner, rare air.
Yeah,
he's still a lot of the metrics like his skill set, but there's just too many plays where he's not trying defensively. Like he's still a top 5 guy on clean zone exits in the entire league. That's one of the best things you can do as a defenseman is come out of your own zone without turning it over. He's having a rough stretch, but I wonder when they add Jake Wallman, a left shot, who I believe has term left on his deal, is that we're done with Bouch and he's going to be our Ekholm left side guy, or am I off base here? Because I think Bouch is a righty, but I don't know. Like I'm trying to.
How do you fix the roster construction? You have to pay McDavid. You have to pay Draisaitl. You want to pay those.
Draisaitl's raise comes in next year at $14 million.
But the rest of it, I think they've fumbled and thought they were closer, and they tried to stop gaps and fill some holes with older guys and let other guys. It doesn't feel like it's Colorado we talked about 20 minutes ago. It feels like they have slotting correct, right? If that's a stupid term we have to use. The Oilers to me is we got 2 really good players. This guy, this guy. Let's get this guy. And it's and oftentimes when they go get those guys, dumb media people like us go, that doesn't seem to be the right. I don't know, right? Like, honestly, when is the last? I mean, Wallman. Okay, that's a good trade, and I think Frederick's a good trade. So maybe I'm being over analytical of stuff. But Arvidsson, I thought he'd be better too. But where's that tweet from somebody that had the list of guys that left and the list of guys they brought in? It's not even close, and you can look at it as people that follow hockey and go, "Well, that doesn't make any sense."
No, and then you look at the arms race that is the Western Conference, and you are talking about a team that came, you know, within a whisker, a period or two of hoisting the Stanley Cup in the Stanley Cup final, and yet you look at the Dallas Stars. Undeniably, that is a much better team. They were a better team before Mikko Rantanen, showed up on the scene. I mean, the trade that they made for Granlund and Ceci, I mean, that was crafty work by Jim Nill because it plugged 2 significant holes. And then you add Rantanen on top of that. And then, you know, to Colorado, I mean, Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic were all over it at the start of the year. Didn't like their goaltending. Didn't think that their goaltending was going to withstand the push throughout the season, let alone get to the playoffs. So what do? They rebuild their goaltending. Not 1 guy, 2 guys. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, you know, I mean, Brock Nelson was available to everyone. You know, Charlie Coyle, a real sneaky ad by the Colorado Avalanche. Sneaky ad, you know, a real important bottom 6, can play in your top 6. You know, certainly was doing that with the Boston Bruins. You know, like, so if Colorado can do that and Dallas can do that, Riley Smith was on the radar of the Edmonton Oilers. I know that. Lee ends up back in Vegas, a team that probably you're going to lock horns with. So you look around the West and you see all the improvements made. And I think the fan base is sitting there going, well, wait a minute. Like, you know, again, Wallman fits into the bigger picture. So it's hard to be over critical of that. But trade deadline is a simple deadline. it's the point of when you can't make trades and bring roster players in after the fact. Doesn't mean you can't make trades before the deadline.
Right.
You've got all year long to address those issues, and they just didn't do it.
Okay, so 2 more and we'll move on. First off, they gave the huge vote of confidence, Stan Bowman and others, in Skinner and Pickard. Is that ill-advised based on what we've seen this year?
Well, I want to say no, it isn't, because my hesitation came in, okay, well, you got to address at least one of the 2 issues. That's either your blue line or upgrade your goaltending so that you can work with your blue line, and the odd mistake or handful of mistakes in a game isn't going to capsize you, right? Because your goaltending has been upgraded. So I do like Jake Wallman. I think once he gets settled in, and don't forget, you got to get him the TS Ekholm back in the mix. You bring him back into the fray, and that makes everyone better in that Oilers dressing room. So I'm okay with it. And okay, it's no different than firing a coach. When you're positionally changing a goaltender, John Gibson isn't better. I don't think. I honestly don't. I mean, he's hurt all the time. So I mean, is that an upgrade? And if it's not Gibson, then who is it? Who among the goaltending was available that was going to make them better? And they didn't see it. And I think Stan Bowman was honest in telling the media that they thought it was the body of the work, and it was more about the lack of commitment and the issues they've had with injuries, and all of that contributed to shoddy goaltending. But so I'm okay with that. I'd give them a pass because they improved in an area, one of the 2 areas they had to, and that was on that blue line.
For the last 3-4 years, it's been, okay, well, Leon's going to resign, Connor's going to resign. What's he watching and thinking about here? Because this is the July 1, they got to go to him and say, we're going to make you the highest paid player in the history of the sport. Like, we don't know how this is going to go. They could get playing well again and go to another cup final.
Yeah.
They could flame out in round 1, finally losing to the Kings. Like, we don't, there's a lot of outcomes here, but is there a world where Connor McDavid looks and says, there are other opportunities where I'm better positioned to win a cup than this after what we've seen?
Yeah. I mean, that world exists, only because, we don't know what he's thinking. I as the captain of the team, is he married yet, or his fiance? I see on social media that they're starting businesses in Edmonton. It feels like they're committed to the community in Edmonton, and the Oilers don't have a choice. I mean, whatever Connor wants to get paid, Connor is going to get paid. Whatever that percentage of the cap is, that's what he's going to get. But I would think no different than maybe he's already had conversations, in the past where he's going to want some specific direction, maybe not influence, but he's going to want to know what the plan is and probably provide his input as to what he thinks. But I'm not so sure that happens as much as you guys think now.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're running to Connor and saying, hey, we have an opportunity to do this. What do you think? But I do think you're doing a disservice if you're not leaning on any captain in the National Hockey League, the leader of your room, to say, okay, am I missing something? Like, why is this team as lifeless as it appears that you are? And maybe that drifts into negotiations. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd argue that it's been a decade of below average management that he's had to play with. And when we talk about this team, there's a lot of roster construction issues. He deserves better. I don't think you can say Connor McDavid didn't bring to the table what he was supposed to. I'd say the opposite about Chiarelli. I know that there was some swings and misses with Ken Holland, also some wins. Summer of Jeff Jackson has looked miserable. Summer of Jeff was a disaster. He put himself in the spot to get offer sheeted, then made the room and didn't. We showed you the before and after of the guys that were there and then who they brought in. You definitely could build a strong case. They've done him dirty, not the opposite. Yeah,
but you could also look at it, do they get Zach Hyman, without the influence of Kenny Holland and everybody involved in that process? That Matthias Ekholm trade was a sneaky good trade.
Best deal.
So, I mean, they historically have added some pieces that did help. the Oilers go as deep as they did last year, but that's not what we're talking about. I mean, you can't be measured by what you've done in the past and where you got to, because you didn't win the Stanley Cup. You know, and that is the true measurement when you're talking about a top contending team and the best player on the planet in Connor McDavid. So it's impossible to say that Stan Bowman or management there is on the clock. And I got in trouble for saying that recently when I said the owner of the Edmonton Oilers is a very active and hands-on owner. I overstated. Well, I mean, there were people there. He's got his defenders in the market who didn't like the way that I positioned it. And I did exaggerate in saying, you know, he calls 20 times a day or whatever. Well, he's involved heavily, but I understand that and I applaud it and I support it because it's his billions of dollars that are, you know, being invested here.
His choice is right.
Hey, write all these checks and ignore everything that happens. That's how you should
trust us.
So I guess what I'm saying in a roundabout way is, and we can't predict what's going to happen. I mean, maybe they flip the switch and they find it in the final 10, 15 games of the regular season. Off they go. You know, the playoffs goes perfect, and there they are in the Stanley Cup final again. If it goes the opposite direction, and I think it was Craig Button on our deadline day coverage who pulled out his matrix as it was positioned that day based on standings. And I think it was LA Edmonton in the first round. And I'm pretty sure Button predicted that LA would beat Edmonton in the first round of the playoffs. Well, if that were to happen, a first round exit, no matter who the Oilers play, okay, we're having a different conversation after that, because then the owner most definitely, I think, would demand some form of significant change, be it roster or otherwise.
Okay, well, that's we're done here in Calgary talking about our second favorite team, which is whoever's playing the Oilers and the pain that they feel. The main squad is dealing with some major center issues. Michael Backlund just announced minutes ago week, and you have Connor Zary, who immediately moved into Backlund's spot after the injury, suspended for a pair. This is a huge blow to a club that is holding on to the final wild card by a tiebreak. One fewer game played than the Canucks. What do you see happening in Calgary?
Well, I mean, the Backlund news is brutal for a variety of different reasons. And, you know, I checked in before we launched the segment, and, you know, obviously they're hopeful that he's back before the end of the regular season. But when you list week to week, all bets are off. I don't know the specifics of their injury. I mean, you guys have a pretty keen eye. Was it the hit on Mancini that did the damage? It appeared to be that. You know, anything from shoulder to wrist. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's a significant blow. But I mean, isn't it, you know, the old next man up theory that has to be applied here? And, you know, if it's Connor Zary post suspension, fine. He's capable of accepting that level of responsibility. You know, what about Morgan Frost? That guy, you know, what's your guys' view on, you know, his play overall since the trade with Philadelphia Flyers? I mean, he wanted to change. The contract negotiation wasn't going the way that maybe he wanted to, or that the Flyers wanted. Hence, he gets involved in a trade, and it's a fresh start. Looked pretty good right out of the gate. You could see some sparks, some pops, some jump, but I think it feels like you need a little bit more. So maybe this is opportunity for him to provide a little bit more.
Rhett, Frost thoughts?
I think you can see why the Flyers were willing to move away. That's how I think of Frost's play right now, where you're like, you could be really good, except you're not doing anything. So you have to accomplish something to prove that you're worth what you want to get paid. I can see why the Flyers moved away, but
Sorry, my bad. We got a little delay because Rhett's a province over, and he looks like he's on an Atari system today. Frost, he's, you know, they're giving him the ozone starts. They're sheltering him. Backlund's on, does all the heavy lifting. He's helped on zone entries on the power play. You see the hands, but it's time now. Backlund's out. Now you have to take some heavier minutes. And, you know, he has had some strong defensive metrics at times in his career. They're going to lean on him heavily. They got McKinnon, Nelson, Coyle, Drury down the middle. The 4 of the 5 best centers on the ice tonight are Avalanche players. They need Morgan Frost badly in the short term.
Yeah. And again, he's capable of doing that, but Rhett nailed it. Like, when you look at the makeup of the Philadelphia Flyers, not to pile on Morgan Frost, I happen to like the kid a lot. It's a bit of a personal thing. My kid was drafted by the Sioux Greyhounds, and Morgan Frost, I believe, was captain at the time and was incredible to my kid at that level. So I've got a soft spot, and I want him to do well. But when he's brought into the organization in Calgary, man, it was basically a green light. Like, there's an opportunity here for you to put down roots. We're not going to worry about the contract right now, but just play your game. There's if John Tortorella has the shackles, well, you have to play defensively responsible, but we're going to give you a little bit more flexibility in our system here to evolve and develop. And I guess there's still time for that. So I'm not throwing this kid under the bus entirely. I'm just going to go back to how we started. You lose Michael Backlund, you're losing a little bit of everything that he can bring. So if you're not generating offense, if you're Morgan Frost, you better do something else that is going to separate you and make you a difference maker and help take up some of the slack that's left from not having the experience and the presence of Michael Backlund up the middle.
What have you seen from the Canucks? It was a banger of a game on Wednesday.
Yeah.
With it's only a couple times a year will they see each other at the Saddledome. I was there. The place was jumping. Lots of Canucks fans. And if you're a Canucks fan, there's some inspiring things there. Elias Pettersson, first time in a long time, he looked like Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, Elias Pettersson. So Ray Ferraro obviously does those Canucks games, a lot of them. And we talked about Pettersson on the podcast. And Ray thought that might have been his best game. Might have been his best game of the year. And not just because he forces overtime with a huge goal, but just how he was engaged, just overall. And, it's the simple and the stupid and the silly things that you kind of notice. So he scores a tying goal. And for whatever reason, I'm drawn to the celebration, and he actually looked like he knew that this was a huge goal for the organization, not just for himself, but for everybody. And everybody kind of, glommed into the scrum. And it looked like genuinely this was a team that was appreciative of what just happened and the opportunity in front of them. And then I think of Quinn Hughes, who obviously has been dealing with a ton of injury prior to the Four Nations, coming out of the Four Nations. What did he play that game? Like 29 minutes or something like that in his first game back. And I, not to shift conversations here, but I always go through, because I'm one of the voters of the major awards, and I start. Well, it depends on what the award is. For the Norris, I do it with defensemen. I think I've told you guys this story where I'll pull a handful of guys, former NHL defense, some of them Norris Trophy winners that I trust, and I break it down in a 5-part segment over the course of the year, because specific to the Norris, I think that's important. It's not just about the point getter. Anyway, I'm looking at my heart ballot, and I can't look beyond Quinn Hughes. Not at the top of the list, obviously. You got to put 5 names down. And without injury, he'd be comfortably in my top 5. And that's saying a lot. When you look at McKinnon, you look at Draisaitl, Connor Hellebuck probably deserves acknowledgement there. Nikita Kucherov having another hell of a year. So, this Vancouver team is an interesting one. And we look in the East at the standings and the battle, and then you look at the West, and it's as intense or more so between Calgary, Vancouver. Utah's a hell of a story right now, and the St. Louis Blues won't go away. So we'll see if the switch has been flipped, as I said earlier, around the Vancouver Canucks, because they're showing little signs that it has, but there's still plenty of hockey left.
One piece of news today, Aiden Hill inks a 6-year extension with Vegas. He was a pending U. That was some work that had to get done. The goalie market, I feel like we've kind of seen how things are settled. A lot of guys with 5x5-ish, if they're platoon guys. Better than a platoon, you can get bumped up a bit. So 6.25 for the Stanley Cup winning netminder. I have been lobbying hard, and I don't think it's hard to get anyone on my side. And I think everyone's on the same page. This is the summer you drop an 8-year extension on Dustin Wolf's desk with 1 year left at like $900,000 and Arbright's next summer.
Yeah.
How do you begin to see what a Calder candidate should get in net? Because it's a small body of work, but it's also a career of dominating every league he's played in.
But if you're Dustin Wolf, why would you do that? Like, why would you take that mega deal?
Because you're an injury away from losing $60 million.
Yeah, but you're also 2-3 years away from perhaps making 100 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean and that's a very individual thing, as I'm sure Rhett would tell you.
Yeah.
Again, to reflect on Ferraro, he always said he hated going into the final year of any contract because of what you just said, the uncertainty, the lack of security, and knowing that you've got millions and millions and millions of dollars at stake. There it is. Just sign the contract. But I'll tell you what, the intestinal fortitude of some of these kids and their player representatives is off the charts. They just have no issue betting on themselves. But if I were Calgary, 100%, that's the approach I would take. Why not? I mean, it looks the early evidence in this kid is that he's going to be really good for a long period of time. So if he's willing to lock in that long, then try and get it done.
So would you say between Hill and the Ulmark Swayman deals would be a reasonable ending spot, or do you think he could ask for even more?
Hard to ask for more, and then throw Jake Ottinger into that equation too, right? Like just those guys that have proven more than Dustin Wolf to this point of his career. And I think it was Ken Hitchcock told me a bazillion years ago, and it was in reference to defense. But I applied to goaltending, not the same number of games. But Hitch said to me once, you don't know what you have in an NHL defenseman until that guy has played 300 NHL games. And then you've got a good sample size of the type of defenseman he is, where he's at, where he can still grow to. And I don't know what that number is in starts for NHL goalies. I don't. I'm sure the goalie gurus do, but I apply it positionally. Just because you don't know. And mistakes can be made in a big way when it comes to locking down goalies. So maybe keep them hungry for a little bit longer and see how that plays out.
I jumped on your Rhett. Sorry, did you have something there?
Well, I was just going to say that the one thing Wolf has always had is the I have to prove it attitude. And if you give him that, does it change? How do you, there's always, right? Like, I don't know. He doesn't come across that way to me. Like he's going to put his feet up and coast, but he has always had I have to prove it.
And you know what, Rhett, that dates back to, I want to think about this. We played a friendly tournament in LA, and I believe Wolf was on the LA Junior Kings. So we're talking like bantam AAA hockey. And the Whitby Wildcats made the trek. Pat Brisson organized. Craig Johnson's kid was on that team. Rob Blake's kid was on that team. Nelson Emerson, like go down the list, right? All those LA Kings players. And I'm standing beside Brisson, and we're watching. Brendan Brisson would have been on that team. We're watching these kids play, and Wolf was in net. And Pat goes to me, Dregs, he goes, this kid's going to be a real good NHL goalie. And I'm looking at him going, he's like 13 or 14, and he's like 5'8". Like, how can you conversely, Spencer Knight at the same age we played, actually might have been the Pee Wee tournament, the Quebec Pee Wee tournament. He played for Mike Richter, I think was coaching that team, the midfield, the Connecticut, whatever the hell the team was. Spencer Knight was like 6'1" when he was like 13 years of age. And we're looking at that kid and going, of course he's playing in the NHL. Like, look at him, So Wolf has been on the radar for a long, long time. So here's hoping it works out for him.
Yeah, interesting. Those two will be tied together forever. World Junior teammates for 2 years.
Yeah.
Wolf backed them up 2 years. One was a top half of the first round, and the other was 4 picks from not being drafted at all. It's a fun one for Flames fans to look at. Okay, Dregs. Hey, thanks a bunch. Have a great weekend. We appreciate all the insight, and I hope the Oilers aren't upset with anything factual we said about them today.
Well, my only focus moving forward for the rest of this day, because I'm not looking at social media, is the 4 big beefy Delmonicos that are going on the grill.
Smoking, boys. I love it. Enjoy.
Okay, fellas, have a great weekend.
All right, there's Darren Dreger, TSN Insider, joining us on the Crystal Waters Hotline. Hey, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And, of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.